We have some massive news coming out here. The Las Vegas Raiders will be without one of their star players in Christian Wilkins, who had surgery for a Jones fracture that he suffered on Sunday. Massive blow, in my opinion, if you guys ask me. He is likely to be out for the next 6 to 10 weeks, which is the average recovery time for this type of surgery. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we also got some information with Michael Mayer that could be a positive thing. Lastly, we got an update on Davante Adams, which we'll get into at the end of this video. Really not a big deal at this point, but let's just get right into it. So Ian Rappaport put it out there that according to his sources, Raiders defensive tackle Christian Wilkins is out indefinitely after undergoing surgery to repair a Jones fracture, which he suffered on Sunday. Wilkins, Las Vegas's big money free agent acquisition, is being out is crushing blow in the middle of that defense. He'll likely head to the IR. So let's talk about this in a little bit. So Christian Wilkins actually had his foot wrapped going into that game against the most recent game against the Denver Broncos. He had the foot wrapped, so there was obviously something already kind of going on there. We're not 100% sure if it was already fractured at that point. I'm going to say it probably wasn't. And then he had a play in which he actually got a sack that some people are saying could have potentially led to him actually getting this Jones fracture, which was after he got the sack and as he was celebrating, Adam Butler actually jumped on top of Christian Wilkins. And that brought him down. Now, what's interesting about that play is Christian Wilkins actually went out and he still played in 2 more snaps after that. But it was very noticeable on tape, man. This guy was limping on those 2 plays, and you can see it. You can see it in the 2 plays after the sack. This guy was not healthy looking, and he wasn't limping that much, in my opinion, prior to that happening. Now, that's speculation. I don't know if Adam Butler jumping on this guy was actually what caused the Jones fracture, but that is the speculation right now. We probably will never know if that's fact or not unless someone actually asks the coach or Wilkins himself. But this is a huge blow, in my opinion, however you look at it. You know, the Las Vegas Raiders defensive line has now lost 2 of its 3 best defensive linemen. And we came into this season saying that this defensive lineman is what's going to be key for the Las Vegas Raiders. This defensive lineman will take us over the top. This defensive lineman will be arguably the best defensive line in the NFL. And 2 of those 3 guys are now out for an extended amount of time. Malcolm Koonce is already hurt. He was hurt coming into the season. He is not playing at all this season for the Raiders. He obviously has a torn ACL. And now Christian Wilkins, has the Jones fracture in his foot. So he'll be out for the next 6 to 10 weeks, which is the general time frame of how long it takes. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Wilkins does not play for the rest of this season for the Raiders. And this is a huge blow, however you look at it. An absolute superstar caliber player. And Jones or Wilkins has been really, really, really good for the Raiders as well. You know, people on Twitter have been posting, is this guy even out there? Like, I haven't even seen an impact from him. I don't see him actually doing anything out there. And the thing is if you only look at ESPN stats, if you're only looking at the sack numbers, you might not realize it. But if you guys watch the tape of Christian Wilkins, the guy was an absolute star out there for the Raiders. And I think this is such a huge blow for the Raiders. We'll obviously still have Adam Butler, who I think is still a really, really good defensive tackle. In fact, Adam Butler has basically matched what Christian Wilkins has done this season. And that's not a knock on Wilkins. That's just how great Adam Butler has been. So we'll go into this season. We still have Adam Butler, who's a great defense tackle. We could move Tyree Wilson to the inside as well. You know, Clavon Chasen looked pretty good this past week. We have guys like Narius Robinson, although Robinson really is only known for a guy that gets penalties. Robinson still has some upside as well. And then we still have some of the other guys like Charles Snowden, who's looked good. But the Raiders' defensive line depth is going to take a hit with this one. We'll see how, we kind of go forward. Nesta Jade Silvera is another guy that's kind of stepped up recently for the Raiders. Silvera, I think, has a ton of upside. He's going to be asked to play a lot more. And he's already played a lot, right? But it'll be a lot more going forward. Then John Jenkins is John Jenkins. I think Jenkins is kind of taking a step back, in my personal opinion. But huge blow, however you look at it. But there are some positive things that have come out today. Specifically with the Raiders tight end in Michael Mayer, who has been out for personal reasons. I want to say, before we actually get into this report, I actually had a guy that reached out to me. He DM'd me on Twitter, said that he actually has a family friend who, or he actually knows a friend who's a family friend to Michael Mayer and his family. And he basically told me something very similar to this. And I'm not sure if your boy Q is just putting this out there from what that guy said, or if he actually has inside information. But Q actually put this report out there, and ML Football just, put it even further out there, I should say. But apparently Raiders standout Michael Mayer is away from the team due to a personal matter in his life that has come up again. His family told the team. I don't think his family actually told the team, but apparently, and I guess the quote is, the family informed the team it's a situation that has occurred in his life before and has popped up again. I'm not sure how accurate this report is. I'm going to just say that right now because I got a DM. Very, very similar thing was told to me. I don't know how accurate it is, but let's just say that that report is accurate. I'm actually glad that this is what it is, right? And let me say this. I'm not, I hope everything's okay with Michael Mayer, right? First and foremost, I hope everything's okay. If it's a medical issue, I hope he gets the help he needs. If it's something else, I hope everything gets resolved. But I'm glad that this was not a trade request, right? Because Michael Mayer could still be a really, really, really good tight end for the Raiders. And if Michael Mayer doesn't want to play with the Raiders because of the fact that we brought in Brock Bowers, our offense has struggled a little bit, quarterback play has been a little shaky. If Brock Bowers didn't want to be here Michael Mayer not want to be here for those reasons, that would suck. And then apparently he would, at that point, request a trade. But that's not what it seems like is happening in this instance. And it also makes sense, right? Like, no one out there has reported at all, right? Like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, none of these guys have reported that Michael Mayer has requested a trade. And generally, when you request a trade, you're not leaving the football team and you're not away from the football team. You're still in the locker room, right? You're still showing up to practice so you don't get fined. And you also don't want to show any other team that, hey, I'm a negative player by not showing up, right? Because then teams aren't going to essentially want to trade for you. Plus, Michael Mayer is a good tight end. This guy would get 10 teams lined up tomorrow as long as, the Raiders aren't asking for a first or a second round pick. And if Michael Mayer was truly requesting a trade, he'd already be traded at this point. So I do think it has something to do with the, personal matter related to his family. I hope everything's okay with him. To me, this is actually a positive thing for us to kind of hear because this means that he'll be back with the Raiders. And the thing that people don't recognize is, it's different if you have Davante Adams out there who's eating up 25% of the targets. But 25% of the targets just cleared up, right? So the Raiders are going to move off of Davante, which means Michael Mayer is going to get a lot more targets as he goes forward. And he's already played 55% of snaps. So it's not like Michael Mayer's not out there playing. But now that snap percentage is going to go up. And even with Brock Bowers, the one thing we've noticed in the last 2 games is that even though Davante Adams isn't out there, Brock Bowers is now moved out towards the slot. He's moved out as an outside wide receiver. He's still doing the things where he goes in motion. He's in the backfield. And at the moment, it's been Harrison Bryant who's been playing a lot. We've had some of the other tight ends kind of rotate in, but in the future, when Michael Mayer is fully healthy and everything's good with him, it'll be him taking those snaps. And I think that's going to benefit the Raiders so much, and I can't wait until that point actually comes. I think Michael Mayer should be good to go at the point where he is able to kind of come back. I hope everything's okay with him. And then let's talk a little bit about this Steelers game, and then we'll wrap it up with some Davante Adams news. If you guys don't know this, the Pittsburgh Steelers have some key injuries that I think could benefit the Raiders a little bit. And the season's not over. I know a lot of people are already looking forward to the offseason. A lot of people are already out on Antonio Pierce and this coaching staff. The season's not over, right? We still have a ton of games left. If the Raiders win 3, 4, 5 straight games, it flips the entire season. And it's not like that hasn't happened in the past. In 2021, the Raiders went on a run at the end of the season to make the playoffs. We've seen this happen with so many teams in the past where teams kind of go on a run and they end up making the playoffs. So the Raiders season is not over. And we do get a little bit of a break against Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers will be without Cordell Patterson, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, Jalen Warren, Pruitt, Kazi, as all of these guys are likely out. Now, I have no idea who Pruitt and Kazi are. I'm going to assume Pruitt is the defensive lineman. I think Kazi might be a linebacker. Don't quote me on that. But the guys that are going to be likely out for him, including these 2 guys, is huge. People don't know who Nick Herbig is. If you guys follow my channel close enough, you guys know who he is. But Nick Herbig is a special defensive lineman. He's in his 2nd year. I think he came out of either Wisconsin or Nebraska. He was a rookie last year. He played like 60 snaps last year. But when you watched his 60 snaps that he played last year, they were impressive. He had like 4 or 5 sacks on those snaps. This year, he has a ton of sacks. He has a ton of quarterback hits. Nick Herbig is a top 10 potential defensive end. Like, he's an absolute incredible player. If you guys don't know who he is, go Google him. Go look at his tape. Nick Herbig is really, really good. And he played last week against the Cowboys, and he dominated the Cowboys. He had like 12, 13 impactful plays absolutely crushed the Dallas Cowboys. And Alex Highsmith's the other guy that's also out. And that's going to give our offensive line a huge break. Now, Heisman, I don't think he's played this season at all, or if he has, it's been very, very limited. But he's likely not going to play this week, and then Herbig is also likely out. So that's at least going to give the Raiders an advantage. And it's still not an advantage, right? We got TJ Watt coming up. TJ Watt's still a great player in his own right. They have Keanu Benton, who's also a pretty good defensive tackle. And they have Hayward, the other guy that also plays defensive line, also a pretty good defensive tackle. Plus, they have two running backs, or two offensive players in Cordell Patterson and Jalen Warren, who are likely going to be out. That's also going to benefit the Raiders a lot. So, the Steelers game's winnable. We get some breaks. These are just some of the reports that are coming out that I just wanted to update you guys with. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up with some Davante Adams talk. So, Robert Saleh was fired earlier. And there's a report that's starting to circulate a little bit, which is that Robert Saleh apparently didn't want Davante Adams. Now, I don't know how true this is, but a guy that's very, very solid, very well connected within the NFL circles, actually put it out there that Robert Saleh was against the Davante Adams trade. And he got fired today. Now, the Jets aren't terrible. They have a top 5 defense. They're 2-3. Their offense has struggled. Robert Saleh apparently wanted to fire the offensive coordinator there. But that offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, also is connected to Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator for Davante Adams' final 3 years with the Packers, as well as Aaron Rodgers' final 3 years with the Packers. Nathaniel Hackett is one of those guys that is still going to be with the Jets. He's still the offensive coordinator, and they haven't really had success, but some people also say it's because the Jets don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. I kind of agree with that. Garrett Wilson's a good player, but he's a number 2. He's not a number 1. And with that, when he gets double teamed, he gets taken out of games, right? He's not able to win. And apparently that could allow the Jets and Raiders to actually end up agreeing to that trade potentially. So there's a chance the Raiders end up trading Davante Adams in the next couple of days to the New York Jets. In fact, the reports that have come out right now is that the Jets are the clear front runners with the Raiders for Davante Adams. And that makes sense, right? It'll just come down to the contract aspect and the compensation. If the Raiders want a 2nd-round pick, they'll have to eat up $30 million in dead cap. If the Raiders want a 3rd-round pick, they'll pass off 20 of that $30 million on to the New York Jets, right? So it's just going to come down to them agreeing with the actual terms. But Robert Saleh being fired could also mean that, the Raiders could actually get the job done or the deal done. Now, another thing to note with Robert Saleh being fired is some people have speculated, should the Raiders move off of AP as well, right? It's a question that's kind of interesting because I don't think Antonio Pierce is by far the biggest issue with the Raiders right now. In fact, if I had to rank it, I would make the argument that our injuries is one of the key indicators as to the Raiders struggling, right? You lose Malcolm Koonce. You lose even your left tackle came into the season not healthy. We've seen how that's impacted this team. Thayer Munford's out, right? Not saying Thayer Munford's a great football player, but still, you lose your starting right tackle. You're kind of adding a new element of a rookie in there. You got to change up your offense a little bit. You're struggling to run the football. You have some guys like Marcus Epps, Divine Diablo, right? You have guys that are kind of banged up a little bit, and now you have Davante Adams. So I don't think AP is by far the worst. I think injuries, your offensive coordinator, your inconsistent quarterback play, I think all of that is probably worse at this point than Antonio Pierce. Regardless of that, we did get an update with Davante Adams as well, and this came from Jay Glazer. I'm not going to actually play the video because Fox, for some reason, copyrights every time that I put any of their videos into my video. But Jay Glazer kind of added some elements to the timeline of how everything kind of happened. So if you guys remember, last week on Monday, which was September 30th, on September 30th, Antonio Pierce went and actually liked some tweets, right? He went on Instagram. It was actually Monday night, right, on September 30th. And AP liked some Instagram posts. And the next morning, Tuesday, October 1st, Davante Adams was asked about it on the K Adams podcast. And he said, I haven't spoken to Antonio Pierce. Davante said, I don't know why Antonio Pierce would like that stuff, but I haven't heard from him at all. And then 2 days later, Davante Adams requests a trade. Now, Jay Glazer put a little bit more context in that. He said that Davante Adams actually hit up Antonio Pierce sometime Sunday night, said, I need to talk to you. And then Monday morning, apparently they spoke. And apparently that's when Davante Adams told Antonio Pierce that I don't want to finish my career this way. I want to be traded. right? So now Jay Glazer's adding this whole element that Antonio Pierce requested a trade. I'm sorry, Davante Adams requested a trade Monday on September 30th, the same day Antonio Pierce liked that stuff on Instagram. Now, what's interesting about if that's actually true, that means Davante Adams the very next day went on the K Adams podcast and essentially lied, right? By saying that, hey, I don't know why he liked that stuff. I don't know why Antonio Pierce went and liked that stuff, and he hasn't spoken to me yet, right? So to me, there's something obviously going on here, right? We're never going to know the truth. If I'm a betting man, I would say this timeline kind of goes more like this. Monday, Tuesday, after the Raiders lost to the Panthers, Antonio Pierce spoke to Jack Jones, Davante, and a couple other players. He called them out to their face, said, you're not playing the first quarter of this next game. At least he told certain people that. And Davante didn't respond well to that. And Davante Adams said, I want to trade before the Cleveland Browns game, right? At some point between that week, right? Which is like September 27th, for example. Right, I think Davante requested a trade a lot longer than before we realized it. And I think what ended up happening is the Raiders, Tom Telesco, started reaching out to a couple of teams that, hey, are you interested in Davante Adams? We're willing to trade him. And I think the first initial report that ended up leaking, I think, was on September 29th. I think there's a chance that someone that worked for the Jets, someone that worked for the 49ers or one of these other teams most likely told that guy, and then that guy on Sports Illustrated, he worked for Sports Illustrated, I think he went out and he kind of put that out there that, hey, Davante Adams is going to be traded. AP went and liked that post, and that's kind of when everything started. A couple days later, it gets officially announced. I'm pretty sure this entire thing started a week prior to, all this stuff over here on social media. Regardless of that, man, really not a big deal. I'm happy the Raiders are moving off of Davante. I think our team as we go forward is in a pretty good spot. And I think we're going to be a good team as we continue to go forward, right? I think we're going to bounce back. It's just a matter of time until it comes together. This season's not over yet. If we're 2-7, sure, the season's over. But you can go on a 3-4 game win streak at any given point, right? There's 4 months of football left. So the Raiders can still bounce back. If Aiden O'Connell starts, who knows? What if he's an absolute super sharp player and we're able to win 4 or 5 games straight, right? You never know what's going to end up happening. So let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.